greetings everybody, it's Gleekon here again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last one, we looked at the next little rule book in the Warcraft role-playing game aside. We've been doing the monster compendium, some kind of monster. I already forgot what it's called. In our last chapter, that was focusing on the lore, we did read chapter 4 of Cycle of Hatred. I've been kind of cycling back and forth. In that chapter, we just saw more tensions building between the Alliance and the Horde, where they just didn't feel like helping the orcs out, it sounds like. I've been trying. I was actually going to pop over and do a Chronicles, but there's a lot of chapters in this book, so I just felt like reading another one. The last one of these is pretty short, so we're going to read another one of these. So stay a while and listen to chapter 5 of Cycle of Hatred. Byrok never imagined that the happiest time in his life would be when he went fishing. On the face of it, it didn't seem to be the life of an orc. Fishing involved no battle, no glory, no challenging combat, no testing of one's mettle against an equal foe. I don't know, man. If you've ever been deep sea fishing or fishing at all and you fight a big fish, that's a battle. I've had some battles in my time. No weaponry was involved. No blood was shed. Again, it can get bloody. But it was less what he did than why he did it. Byrok went fishing because he was free. As a youth, he had heard the false promises of Gul'dan and his Shadow Council, who promised a new world where the sky was blue and the inhabitants easy prey for superior orc might to conquer. Byrok, along with the others of his clan, followed Gul'dan's instructions, never knowing that he and his council did the bidding of Sargeras and his foul demons, never realizing that the price for this new world would be their very souls. It took a decade for the orcs to be defeated. Either they were enslaved by the demons they thought were their benefactors, or they were enslaved by the humans, who proved to have more fight in them than the demons had imagined. Demon magic had made Byrok's memories of his life in the orcs' native land dim. A lack of interest in remembering had a similar effect on his recollections of his life in human bondage. He recalled mainly that the work was backbreaking and menial, and it destroyed what little of his spirit the demons had left intact. Then Thrall came. Everything changed then. The son of the great Durotan, whose death had in many ways been the end of the orcs' former way of life, Thrall had escaped his overseers and used the humans' own tactics against them. He reminded the orcs of their long-forgotten past. On the day that Thrall and his growing army liberated Byrok, he swore that he would serve the young orc until one of them died. So far, that death had not come, despite the finest efforts of human soldiers or demon hordes. One lesser member of the Burning Legion did, however, claim Byrok's right eye. In exchange, Byrok removed the demon's entire head. Fair trade. When the fighting ended and when the orcs settled in Durotar, Byrok requested that he be relieved of his service. Should the call to battle be sounded, Byrok promised he would be the first in line to take up the mantle of the warrior once again, even with one eye missing. But now he wished to make use of the freedom he had fought so hard for. Thrall naturally granted it to him and to all those who requested it. Byrok did not need to fish, of course. Durotar included some excellent farmland. Since the human lands were located in the marshy territory to the south, humans could not grow crops and so turned most of their energy to fishing. They would trade their surplus to the orcs in exchange for their surplus crops. But Byrok wanted no fish caught by humans. He wanted nothing to do with humans if he could possibly avoid it. Yes, the humans had fought at the orc side against the Burning Legion, but that was an alliance of necessity. Humans were monsters, and Byrok wanted nothing to do with such uncivilized creatures. So it was rather a shock to the one-eyed orc to find 6 humans in his usual fishing spot on Deadeye Shore. For starters, the area surrounding Byrok's fishing hole was high grassland. Byrok's tracking skills had been reduced a bit by the lack of a good right eye, but he still saw no indication that any but he had traversed through the grasses, especially not any humans, who for such small, lightweight creatures were pathetically overt in their movements. Nor did Byrok see any airships nearby, nor any boats on the water within sight of the fishing spot. How they arrived, though, was of considerably less concern to Byrok than the fact that they had arrived. Setting down his fishing gear, he unstrapped the Morning Star from his back. The weapon had been a gift from Thrall after the war chief had freed him from bondage, and Byrok went nowhere without it. Were these fellow orcs in Byrok's spot, he would have questioned their presence, but humans, particularly human trespassers, deserved no such consideration. He would find out their intent by stealthier means. At best, they might simply be fools who strayed too far north and did not realize they were invading. Byrok had lived a long time and had come to understand that stupidity was a far more common explanation than malice. But at worst, these might be true invaders, and if they were, Byrok would not let them walk out of its fishing hole alive. Byrok had learned the human language during his time in captivity, and so was able to understand the words of these six, at least those he could hear. From where he was crouched down amid the tall grass, he could hear only a few words. The words he did hear, however, were not encouraging. Overthrow was one, Thrall another, so was Greenskin, a derogatory human term for orcs. Then he caught the phrase, "We'll kill them all and take this continent for ourselves." Another asked a question, the only word of which Byrok caught was troll. The one who wished to take the continent then said, "We'll kill them too." Pushing aside the grass, Byrok looked more closely at the humans. He didn't notice anything particularly distinguishing about them. All humans looked alike to Byrok. But the old orc did notice that the two closest to him had the image of a burning sword on their person. One as a tattoo on his arm, the other as an earring. So it's burning blade beetle. His blood running cold, Byrok remembered where he'd seen that symbol before. It was long ago when the orcs first came to this world at Gul'dan's urging. They called themselves the Burning Blade, and their armor and flags carried the same symbol that these two humans wore. The Burning Blade were among the fiercest devotees of the Shadow Council. They were later wiped out and none of that demon-loving clan remained. Yet here were humans wearing their symbol, and speaking of killing Thrall. His blood boiling, Byrok got to his feet and started running toward the sextant, twirling the morning star over his head. Even with his bulk, the only noise he made as he approached was the whizzing sound of the morning star's chain as it pivoted on the handle in Byrok's fingers and rotated along with the large spiked ball on the other end around the orc's head. That was unfortunately enough. Two of the humans, the two with the burning blade symbol, whirled around, so Byrok targeted the nearest of those two first, throwing the morning star right at his shaved head. He wasn't concerned about losing his weapon. No human could lift the thing, so it would be safe until he could grab it again. "An orc! About time one showed up. Kill it!" Since the element of surprise was gone, he let out a huge roar. That always intimidated humans, and leapt at another, this one with a full beard. Byrok's massive fist collided with the bearded one's head. The one with the shaved head clutched his shoulder. He had managed to avoid being hit in the head, to Byrok's disappointment, and tried to lift the morning star with his other hand. Had he time, Byrok would have laughed. However, he was too busy grabbing another human's head in his right hand and preparing to throw the invader into one of his comrades. That did not happen, however, as another human attacked from the right. Cursing himself for forgetting to account for the fact that he was now blind on that side, Byrok flailed out with his right arm even as pain sliced into his side. Two more humans piled on top of him, one punching him, the other going at him with a blade. Byrok managed to step on one attacker's leg, breaking it instantly. The screams of his victim served to goad the orc, and he redoubled his attack, but there were simply too many of them. Even though two of them were badly injured, they continued to pile on him, and even Byrok could not defeat 6 humans while unarmed. Realizing that he needed his weapon, he inhaled deeply, then let out a huge roar, even as he punched both fists outward with all his strength. It only knocked his foes off him for an instant, but an instant was all he needed. He dove for his weapon, his fingers closing around the handle. Before he could lift it, however, 2 of the humans pounded on his head, and another drove a dagger through his left thigh. Byrok flailed his arm outward, the morning star's ball sailing through the air, just missing the humans. Then, much as he loathed himself for being forced to do it, Byrok ran. It was a hard thing for him, not just because the dagger that was still protruding from his thigh slowed his gait. To run from battle was shameful, but Byrok knew he had a higher duty to perform. The burning blade had returned, only this time they were humans, and all the attackers, not just the 2 he'd noticed before, wore that flaming sword image somewhere on them, a necklace, a tattoo, something. This was information that needed to get back to Thrall, so Byrok ran. Or rather, he hobbled. His wounds were taking their toll. It became a struggle even to breathe, but still, he ran. Dimly, he registered that the 6 humans were giving chase, but he couldn't afford to pay attention to that. He had to get back to Orgrimmar and tell Thrall what was happening. Even with his injury, his strides were greater than those of the humans, and he could outrun them. Once he pulled far enough ahead, he would lose them in the underbrush of this land that he knew better than any outsider possibly could. Besides, they only seemed to want to beat up an orc. They probably did not realize that Byrok understood their gutter tongue, and therefore they did not know that Byrok knew who they were. They would not chase him past the point where it would be useful to them, or so he hoped. No longer were there any thoughts in Byrok's mind. He cleared his head of all save the critical imperative of putting one foot down in front of the other, the ground slamming into his soles. He ignored the pain in his leg, and in all the other places they'd beat or cut him, ignored the fact that his one good eye was getting foggy, ignored the fatigue that drained the strength from his limbs. Still, he ran. Then he stumbled. His left leg refused to lift as it was supposed to, but his right leg continued to run, and so he crashed to the ground, high grass and dirt getting in his nose and mouth and eye. "Must get up. You ain't getting nowhere, monster." Byrok could hear the voice, hear the human's footfalls, and then feel the pressure when 2 of them sat on his back, immobilizing him. "'Cause here's the thing. Your time is over. Orcs don't belong in this world, so we're gonna take you out of it. Got me?" Byrok managed the effort of lifting his head so he could see 2 of the humans. He spat at them. The humans just laughed. "Let's do it, boys. Galtak Ered Nosh." The other 5 all replied in kind. "Galtak Ered Nosh." Then they started beating the orc. All right, so we knew that was in play. We have another instance where we as the reader are seeing the burning blade. The orcs almost had a chance to know. One of the 2 sides, almost had a chance to realize that they were on the scene. And yet it didn't work out that way. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching and for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lore of Warcraft. Now, it's in the pipe. 5x5.